First tonight, Victoria's Chief Coroner has made a damning attack on the Department of Human Services over the death of a 14-year-old boy. Only identified as Aaron, the teenager took his own life in 2008 after enduring years of abuse, sleeping on the streets and openly self-harming. 14 notifications were made to DHS since Aaron was a toddler. None of them were properly followed through. The coroner found Aaron's death might have been avoided had the Department of Human Services done its job properly. No one from DHS was available to speak to us today. I spoke instead to Kevin Zabel from the peak body for child welfare organisations. Well, Kevin Zabel, thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure, Josie.
The State Coroner, Jennifer Coate, has basically found that DHS could have helped save this young boy's life and has been scathing in her criticism of the department. Is this, in fact, the harshest criticism you've seen a coroner direct at DHS?
I wouldn't say it's the harshest, Josie, but it's certainly comes at a time when I think DHS is under pressure, and I think it's a lot more visible than perhaps previous ones have been.
The coroner, in fact, described the number of notifications that this child known as Aaron received as extraordinary. How, in fact, is it possible that a young boy could receive 14 notifications over 12 years and the department fail to act?
I don't think it's extraordinary. I think that that there are lots of cases where there are multiple notifications for children throughout the system, and there are reasons for that, and some of them are valid reasons, and some, as in this case, have tragic consequences, it seems.
So this is actually not unusual, you're saying?
Not unusual for someone to have 14 notifications, I wouldn't have thought.
But the problem with this is that they weren't followed through and they were serious notifications. How does the department just let this one slip through the cracks?
Yeah, look, I can't say how that happened, and that wasn't in the coroner's report that I read. The coroner focused on the final notification and the events surrounding that. What I would say is that as a system, I don't think we've responded well, and I'm being inclusive in the system there, to instances of cumulative harm. And I think that this case is an example of instances of cumulative harm where there have been several reasons for why someone should have probably done something at some stage. No one seemed to, and then in the end it really had a tragic outcome.
Do you agree with the coroner's finding that his life could have been saved had someone at DHS picked up on this?
I think it's very difficult to say that on a one-to-one situation without knowing about it. I think that probably we can say fairly confidently that if we are able to step into situations, then the outcome may be better, but I don't think it's a guarantee in every case.
One of the coroner's clear findings was that there should be, in cases where there are 3 unresolved notifications, a red flag should go up and the department must investigate that. DHS is stalling on that and says it will consider it. Whose interest does that serve?
Don't know whose interest it serves, but it's certainly something that I would support. I think the idea of there being a red flag after a certain number of notifications or a certain number of instances where people are concerned is a good idea, and escalating it up through the system is a good idea at that point.
Then what benefit could there be for DHS not to actually implement that finding?
I don't know. I couldn't see any. I think as a system, and I'm talking about family services, so the early intervention services, through child protection services, through to the magistrates who make the ultimate court determination, I think we all need to take cumulative harm a lot more seriously.
Would you urge them then to adopt that finding as soon as possible?
I would be, yes. I think it's a good finding, and I think it's a sensible recommendation.
There were many, many sad elements of this finding, but one in particular leapt out at me. The coroner described it as almost cruel that when the last DHS worker to have contact with Aaron told him that he would help him make contact with a gridiron club, and Aaron was apparently very excited about that. The only help that was given in that direction was to send him a letter notifying him of where the club was, which was on the other side of the city. Why would a worker do that?
Look, once again, I don't know why a worker would do that in that situation, but what I would say is that when we engage with children and young people, and we do make promises, or we have things to live up to, then we do need to live up to them.
The Department of Human Services was asked to come on and discuss this case but refused. Do you think to improve the system these sorts of cases need to be talked about?
I think they do, and I think they need to be talked about in responsible forums. I'd really urge people to come forward and for example, to take the opportunity to make a presentation to the Protecting Victoria's Vulnerable Children inquiry, and those hearings, those sittings are being held now.
Kevin Zabel, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks, Josie.